to Jeffrey about.
Can we just give you a couple of points rather than
lots
of points?
Sure. One of those points was that some, apparently, anecdotal evidence, some Muslims attacked some English people somewhere in the UK, and this is proof of Islamification. I could give you 10 times the number of reports of Muslims getting packy bashed by thugs. Some of them are pro-BNP thugs. Is this now? Can I use this to say, oh, all English people are violent because a few thugs went attacked? And I must say the statistics are that more Muslims suffer from racism and attacks than non-Muslims. So I mean, how would you answer that one, Jeffrey?
My point would not be that Muslims are intrinsically violent, and that wasn't the point I was trying to make. And I wasn't trying to say that in the country overall that the country is being Islamicized, but I would say that certain areas are. Tower Hamlets, I took just one example. There are parts of Holborn, Bradford, Leeds, Newham, where you have the same kind of situation. And in these communities, which are often quite poor, where people actually don't have the opportunity of leaving quite so easily, as perhaps Alan was suggesting, people do suffer if they're not part of the dominant group. The dominant group has become Muslims, the feeling they can't go into the local park because that's their space. They can't walk down that street, because that's the Muslim space. People do feel that those areas are becoming Islamicized, but I'm aware that if you go out to Henley-on-Thames or something, Boris Johnson's constituency, you wouldn't see too many Muslims or have too much trouble.
It's like saying Stamford Hill is being Judaified because it has a Jewish population, or that Lambeth is being Afro-Caribbeanized because there's a black population and so on. When the immigrants get here, they get put into certain sections. It's not that it's actually just an erroneous topic to say they're being Islamified, because we're talking about the British society. And of course, you're going to get neighborhoods which are predominantly one or the other, and over time they might disperse as they're being absorbed into the population. But every time that immigrants have ever come to England, for example, East London, where you have all the Bangladeshis, before they were owned by the Jews during the 1920s and so on. And maybe we should have a debate back then, so is England being Judified? And so I'm sure it would be much more in sync with the debate going on in Germany at that time.
Well, the Aliens Act was put forward in 1905 because of the strange effect of Polish and Russian Jews who were appearing at that time. So there was a debate back then, there were many debates. So what we're doing now is not really.
Alan, you want to say something?
Yes, I heard you, and you mentioned a few times about, I live in a Muslim majority area, as I say. It's actually an interesting place to live in, and I embrace living in there, and there were some very hilarious and not so hilarious situations. If I said to you the largest and most vital of the mosques of many around our way shares a wall with an off-license, with a large off-license buy your beer here notice sticking out there showing the wall, and run by Bangladeshis, you realise actually this is a society that's actually, it isn't black and white, it isn't set in aspect as seems to be argued on my head, but actually there's a lot of variety. There's a very popular halal restaurant right by the bus stop where I get the bus down there, and last February they were running a Valentine's dinner dance down there. Well, Valentine's dinner dance, a very English or probably American concept, but they're running it in this Muslim restaurant. Life is not all black and white, there are mixtures going on, and for those of us that enjoy the diversity and enjoy living that sort of thing, there's no threat of it. There's no, it is a changing environment in which it's a good place to live. I embrace it. That doesn't stop me, however, saying that aspects of Islam and aspects of Hinduism and aspects of all this other thing. I'd like to have a go at the Humanist in a minute, if it fits within the debate tonight. There are aspects which we want to debate, and that's why these functions like this are very good. But let's not get it wrong. Newham is a good place to live because of its diversity, and I'm proud of the fact that London opens its doors to many people, and from right way around the globe. That is, as I understand it, God's world has come to London.
Father Frank?
2 points. One, in response to what Andrew just said about the virtues of liberal democracy, I would like to remind ourselves of the fact that since 9/11 we have had 2 wars, 2 aggressive wars unleashed against 2 Muslim countries in the name of liberal democracy. the old cliche that democracy does not start wars, it is dictatorships or totalitarian states which do, is no longer valid. Certainly the Iraqi war, by now I think very few people would deny that it was illegal. It was not authorized by a second Security Council resolution. Even the Attorney General, Lord Goldsmith, I think it was, said that regime change would have been not a legal basis to start a war. In fact, that's what happened. We were lied to by Bush and Blair about the Webster's national blah, blah, blah. So, and we know what has happened to Iraq after the invasion. The country's been martyred. And even now it goes on. As far as Afghanistan is concerned, I would like to say, first of all, that I do support the British Army in Afghanistan. They're serving the country doing duty. I do not believe that the war is necessary. I think it is unjustified. I think the war leads nowhere. It's a futile and stupid war. It cannot be won. And indeed, even the much maligned Taliban, after 9/11, when the Yanks had given the ultimatum, you've got to give us Bin Laden, have moved towards, they called a meeting of Islamic specialists, and they had concluded, well, we can't give up Bin Laden to the infidels, that contradicts our values, and the Pashtun Valley incidentally says you cannot give up a host, but we'll ask him to leave. So Bin Laden could have, Al-Qaeda could have been got out of Afghanistan, but the decision had already been made, the Bush and Blair invaded. So both wars, conducting the naval liberal democracy, sanctioned by the British Parliament in this case, were unjust wars. So quite clear, not everything is so hunky-dory on liberal democracy. Second point, minor point about...
sorry, Frank, and Andrew just come in on that. I just want to remind...
Sorry, can I make a very brief point? The only brief point I want to make about Jeffrey, the very painful case of a clergyman who was attacked, and that of course absolutely awful. But I remember when I was training for Bristol in East Oxford, which is a more immigrant-based part of Oxford, Father Martin Flatman, a lovely Anglo-Catholic priest, told me, you know, in this area I get spat upon sometimes. In fact, the only people who are nice to me are the Muslims. He said that. I shall always remember.
I'd just like to finally remind the speakers that the debate this evening is the Islamification of Britain, reality or myth, as much as I value your comments, rather than would Andrew like to respond nonetheless to another issue?
Well, I mean, I don't want to, I really wanted to respond to. I didn't say that liberal democracies don't go to war or that they don't start wars. I simply recommended the liberal democratic framework as a framework for living together in a shared society. However, I think it is worth pointing out that when liberal democracy is maligned in that way, speakers very often on the one hand say liberal democracies do this, and then on the other hand to say what is good as counterposed to civil democracy, they then bring out the institutions of liberal democracy like attorney generals and international law and public protests and inquiry and so on. You know, life is imperfect and there are two sides to every system of organising ourselves.
Robin, would you like to say something?
What's being said, I would sum it up really, but we actually live in a liberal democracy. If you think about, for instance, the government that we've got at the moment, this has got a historically large majority. It's got a majority that can rewrite the constitution at will, and 21% of the electorate voted for it. What kind of liberal democracy is that? I think I would like to come back about the point about Griffith, because actually it's not 25 years ago. And any of you who want to check it out, actually go on YouTube. There's a YouTube of him being interviewed explaining why he'd gone to see Gaddafi to raise money.
How many years ago was it? When did it take place? Do you know which year? 1986, nearly 21 years ago.
I'd like to ask the representative a question of my own. If your party came to power in this country, would you guarantee the rights
has to take really is religious freedom. It's a great tradition of this